Come in, you'll notice you are muted. You'll be muted until the Q&A, and then there's three ways to submit questions. You can submit your questions in the chat, so if they come to mind while we do the initial round of the first three questions, if something comes to mind, you can just pop it in the chat, and I'll grab your question and read it for you. Or when we get to the Q&A, you can raise your hand and come on mic and chat with our panelists. Or if you're feeling really, really shy, and you have a question you want to ask, again, you can use the chat and we'll make sure that we take it from there. So you don't have to have cameras on tonight or mics, but we would love you to interact with us throughout in the chat. Let us know that you're here. Say hello to each other. That is awesome. Feel free to interact and engage with each other in that chat throughout. And we're going to give it about a 2 minute before we start with introductions. So hi to everybody who took the time to join us tonight. 7 p.m. too, which I know is getting a little bit late for some people as well, depending what time zone you are in. So really appreciate it. Really appreciate everybody making the time. It's going to be worth it with these three panelists. I promise you that. While I am waiting for everybody to make their way into the room, my name's Brandy. You've probably seen me around the PsyChicks community. I'm the founder of PsyChicks and the leader of this collective. But tonight's not about me. I'm the moderator. Tonight we're featuring three panelists who I will introduce to you here very shortly. Hello to everyone in the comments. Again, for those who just came in, feel free to interact in the comments. You'll be muted until the Q&A session at least. All right. Should we give 1 more minute? How many people we got here? 7 live. 7 live. Get a private panel for you. Sometimes people come in and out throughout. And if at any point you get tired, you gotta go, that's okay. There will be a replay available. But thank you for being here tonight. All right, so as we've done with our other panels, we're going to begin with roundtable introductions. So please speak as long as you would like while you introduce yourself and give a good, thorough introduction so people have the context of why you're contributing to this panel this evening. And then once you've finished, and we're starting with you, Jojo, please bounce it to Susie, and then Susie, please push it forward to Logan. But Jojo, you're up. Please introduce yourself and let everybody know who you are and what brings you here today.
Well, thank you very much, Brandy. My name's Jojo. I am a psychic, tarot reader, and transformational coach living here in Northern Colorado. And I've been doing this professionally for about 2 years now. But I have a lifelong study and love of all things metaphysical and even occult, but especially the tarot. And so a lot of my work is working with people to help them apply their own intuition, really tap into their own inner guidance and apply that in practical ways to their life and empowering them to make really big and bold actions in their lives. And that's really what I set out to do when I chose to start doing this with others. And for me, that came from the use of tarot and some of these other practices for my own healing. And so over the years, I've gone through a great number of sort of healing transformations. And a few years ago, that really came to a head with some kind of bigger ones in my life. And so after that, it really led to me to want to help others by practicing and showing them how to practice what I have. So I think that pretty much encapsulates my work here. And this is a really exciting topic for me. So I'll leave it at that and leave it to Susie.
Everybody, I'm Susie Wu. I'm a metaphysician, a psychic medium, astrologer, and energy healer, and I am in Western New York. I've been in practice since about 2017 and started my awakening journey in 2009. I also play gongs and channel, and am a light language activator. And my why is because I went through the mill of 22 years of really severe domestic violence. And after I came out of that, it was figuring out like what was so wrong with me that happened. And I came to realize a lot of answers. There wasn't anything wrong per se, outside of not understanding who I was and what my role to myself was. And I coined the phrase, I call it a tagline: find yourself, love yourself, and be proud. And so all of the work that I do is a reflection of that. I do in-person events, have gongs will travel. I also do gallery readings and events and all kind. If it's fun and it's of the light and it's woo-woo, odds are that I do it. Um, and I believe everybody should create a life that you love and build a life that you don't want to escape from. And that's coming from my own experience, as I was an active alcoholic. And my last regular job was at the IRS. So not cool, not fun, not creative, but that was the last stop. And from there is when I first opened an office inside of an office. And then that grew from there. And I finally went full time. And this is what I do on the daily. I help people to realize who they are and build a better life by standing in their own unique pillar of light. And that's it for me. So I'll turn it over to Logan.
Yeah, thank you for that. So hello everyone. I'm Logan Hart. I there's many facets to who I am and what I do, but first and foremost, I am a truth seeker and truth speaker. You know, I operate on a foundation of natural law, morality, and freedom, and truly helping others to be empowered, inspired, and encouraged to live, you know, their own lives, break free of control systems. Um, I'm I live in Dallas, Texas, but I'm also a truck driver. You might notice the weird window behind me. I'm in my truck somewhere in Nebraska right now. And so I travel and work, and I do my podcast and many other things on the side. I'm also a musician, voice actor. Again, there's a lot to me, but for the purposes of this discussion, you know, I'm very much focused on the spiritual realm, but in the practical, right? You know, if it's not practical, if it's not usable, then what good is it, right? So I always try to keep things grounded and balance between logic and intuition and things like that. So, yeah, it's a good place to wrap that up. You're still muted,
You're
Brandy.
muted.
Thank you so much for your introductions. And the reason that I chose you three to come in and talk about this somewhat more touchy subject for some people, because there is a lot of people being activated by this specific conversation about the decline of the New Age industry and the New Age culture, is because all three of you and myself have had conversations about this topic off, off record in our casual interactions, that you had brought points forward, and I knew you guys would be able to handle and have a balanced conversation together. But I do want to share with everybody that these three have never talked to each other about how they feel, so we're hoping to get some diverse perspectives. And as with all of our panels, the goal is to achieve two things. One, have a conversation about the topics that matter to all of us who identify as curious seekers and metaphysical enthusiasts, who many of us also have our livelihoods tied to this industry. We are all going to be affected, obviously, by shifts and changes in the new age. So that's going to be part of this conversation tonight. And then the second thing, we want to demonstrate collaboration and cooperative discussion, even if perspectives are different, because the exploration of all things relating to the metaphysical isn't really about knowing and being the one person who's the one authority. It really is, we don't know. We can only discuss and um, theorize. So that's a big part of this, because maybe one of the three of you don't even think that the new age is in a decline. I haven't asked. I don't know what you've prepped for this. So, without further ado on that, we are going to dive into our very first question. And we're going to go same order as the introductions. And then after that, each member of this panel will get a chance to answer the question first. So, Jojo, you'll get to answer this first question that I've prepped first. And here it is. They do have the questions in advance, because I was fair enough to obviously let them prep in that way. And these questions are not super light either. So, in your opinion, is the New Age industry and culture in decline as more people seem to be turning away from it? And if you had to identify one key cause behind the shift, what would you say that is? So we'll start with you, Jojo.
Okay, well, I'm here to say that I don't really believe that the new age and spiritual culture is in such a great decline as it might seem like it is. And so that concludes our Q&A, and thank you for all attending. But in all seriousness, I think some of this is perception. And so I really, when we had this question, I really tuned into my guides and did some meditation on this and then thought about it. And spiritually, I sense that the sort of collective vibration of humanity is rising on the whole. More and more people are becoming more activated. They are being pulled more into a life of being mindful of this, their sense of spirituality and their connection to the collective or the universe, and really just their place in the universe. And so, if that's true, then how can this be in such a decline? And I really thought about this, and I have no doubt that, especially in terms of like the industry, things like sales and revenue in this industry, that things are declining a bit, and more than just maybe general economic decline. Yeah, I think the pandemic really brought a lot of people to some deep soul searching. And being isolated and quarantined brought people more into this world to some extent. And as that has cleared out, people are maybe getting away from that a bit. So there is that sort of industry decline. But what I also see, and this is so important, I think this is the big factor, is I see a world where a lot of these metaphysical concepts, these spiritual concepts, are far more integrated into our culture and in our popular culture. So I see a world where more and more celebrities are talking about things like the law of attraction and manifestation. You're even seeing this come into popular music in lyrics that people are writing. We have other artists who are not people you would think as the type of people to be out meditating and doing yoga. And you have like hardcore gangster rappers of 20 years ago out there, selling guided meditations. And they haven't really changed their style or their look, but this stuff is just, I think, becoming much more accepted and integrated. And so then what happens with that is that for a lot of us who were maybe in this game a bit earlier, came to this a bit sooner in our lives, we start to feel like it is declining because we're not seeing as many people in these specific spaces of new age and spirituality because they're getting this stuff from their everyday lives a lot more, from this more integrated and accepted culture. And that's a pattern in all of civilization, in humanity, that has repeated itself in so many ways. I've lived through this in my 44 years of life in other things that I enjoy. So, for example, I grew up being very much a geek and a gamer, really loving my comic books and superheroes. And that was its own little insular culture that my friends and I always felt very safe in. And it was not broadly accepted by the greater population. And over the last 30, 40 years, well, now we see superhero movies are everywhere. You can be the captain of the football team and still enjoy your Iron Man movie and wear your Captain America shirt, and no one's going to look down on you for that. And that's a beautiful thing. I think it really speaks to, again, just the flourishing of this and the integration of it. But we tend to react a bit to it as well. So for a lot of people, a lot of us who found these things, and again, it's true in other little like subcultures and other subsets of identity and other movements, we come into it because it feels like it's our own little safe little world and niche. And that's especially true for those of us, many of us who are highly empathic and highly sensitive people. Finding sort of that safe space has been really important for us, especially socially. And as it's grown and sort of, again, just spread out to everyone, it feels like now everyone's in it with us. And so we kind of, I think, subconsciously decide that actually this is a decline because we're not operating in these specific spaces of spirituality of the new world. So I think some of this is very perceptual, but it is a very real issue too. I don't want to take that away from anyone and anyone who is struggling with it. And I think there are some very important practical ways that we can check in with that, both as individuals who enjoy this and live a spiritual life, and also as an industry and as practitioners.
Thank you, Jojo. Susie?
So, uh, so as a practitioner, um, I I don't have a decline in my business. This is what I do full time. And 2020, I really love everything that Jojo had said, and I resonate with everything that he said. But my take on it with the whole 2020 thing, with people becoming isolated and locked down and all of that, was a separation of understanding people's values and identity and having the right rug essentially pulled out from under them. So people realize, oh my God, I'm living with this person. I don't know if I even like them. I don't even know if I like myself. And what in the heck am I doing? And so that created a big influx of seekers. And I was there with a big baseball mitt ready to catch them, saying, let me help you to realize who you are. And let's take a look at your astrology chart and so on and so forth. Nowadays, and you have to look at trends, you have to look at mainstream media, because that's what the big machine is that influences so many people. Now, I am completely unplugged. I've never liked television except for, Saturday cartoons, but I've not had television since 2009. I don't do sports. I don't follow anything. But through social media, that is my only finger on the pulse of what everyone's buzzing about. And so that gives me so much more inner peace and a healthy way to detach from whatever the big fear thing is of the moment. And so nowadays, so I had gotten my Reiki certification years ago. Well, now it's really watered down. You could pretty much get one out of a bubblegum machine nowadays. And it seems to have lost its fervor, I think is the word I'm getting there. And a lot of things are just kind of losing their sparkle. And really what's going on is it's, I wouldn't say oversaturated, but there is somebody popping up on every corner offering this, that, this, and that, and it can become overwhelmed. So in Western New York, up in the Buffalo area, there's psychic fairs every single gosh darn weekend. And so people are getting exhausted. There's fatigue, like another one, another. And the other thing is people who are doing the line of work for the wrong reasons. In other words, they just want their ego stroked, or they want to, I am guru and you listen to me, and they're just projecting their own insecurities into feeling all powerful over other people, which is not what this is about. The healthy, balanced people will have already done their inner work to realize why things unfolded the way that they did, and what are you going to do about it? And so hopefully you use your story to help empower others. It is the human factor that's never going to go away. And so no matter what the trends are, the latest crystal, whatever it is, what's real, what's not real, that is all really handled in the propaganda out there. It's when somebody actually gets on the seeking path, and people will, Google healer near me, or help me understand, or I think I have an attachment. Well, you can't go out into the middle of Walmart and talk like that. They're going to either punch you in the face or want to lock you up. And this is now where the actual struggle is from the 2020 isolation and these new realizations. And is it okay to think and believe that? And I don't know what to believe anymore. Well, who do you go to? And is there a license for that? And the stuff is actually not yet anyways, and hopefully it won't clamp down to that. And so as from a business perspective, I really think it boils down to the human nature factor versus the title. Like, I am a metaphysician, psychic medium, and some people are like, oh, that's devilly stuff. Well, I've gotten through the bumps of that, and I just came to realize, well, they're not my person, and that's okay. There's enough of everything to go around. There's no lack of business. There's no lack of funds running through everywhere. It's up to somebody to realize how they want to allocate the funds that they have. And it's not going to be, like dial a joke, dial a medium. And, people who want to just get the free stuff, well, you a lot of times get what you pay for. And, the whole bait and switch and all of that stuff. So it's had a bad rap forever, ever since there's been modern commercials. um, People like us have been made to appear fraudulent so that you feel bad or you feel icky going to somebody like us. Well, we're here to say, we're real people who have had real experiences, and we're doing it for the right reasons. So from a business perspective, the decline part, that has to do with all of the hashtags, everybody's saying the same thing over and over and pulling it apart, and people are fatigued, they're sick of hearing it, they're tired of hearing it, and they just need to go within and see actually what resonates, and then start to do a little bit of research, and that will lead them to the right, perhaps, practitioner, or the road that they choose to go down. Thank you.
I really appreciate that insight. Okay, Logan, it's your turn.
All right. So yeah, this is a very complex topic. So I would like to just kind of preface first, a little my background. I was raised in a Christian household, Bible Belt, Texas, and I've been on quite the journey ever since. Ever since I was, 19 years old, I started questioning things, and I've moved through many different mindsets that full-blown conspiracy theorist and uh, my time in what I would call the New Age mindset. And I don't consider myself really that anymore, even though I've taken a lot of pieces from each step along the way and kept what resonates and what is useful, but let go of the parts that I feel are not helpful. And starting with that, I might say some things that aren't exactly popular or comfortable, especially in our circles. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay being the Loki, the kind of the outlander. But it's not out of malice. I want people to understand, I'm coming from a good place. I want to say what is necessary to help make people question and maybe continue to evolve their beliefs and not be stuck in kind of one paradigm. So starting with that, I am when I'm speaking about the new age in this context, I want to more think about it as a philosophy. I do think, the business kind of is a byproduct. If people are in a certain mindset, there will be more money will, energy goes where attention flows kind of thing. Like, it's a good metric of that. But what we're really talking about is a mindset, a sort of a belief system. And again, I think there's a lot of beautiful things about the the that philosophy, but I think there's a lot of very strong sticking points that keep people stuck in a lot of ways, and that's some of the reasons that I kind of pulled back and distanced myself. Um, there's a teacher that I follow. I'm friends with as well by the name of Mark Passio. I don't know if maybe you've heard of him or not. He's somewhat known, but not super famous or anything. But he has a background directly working in the dark occult in the Church of Satan. He's since come out of that, and he's more of a whistleblower now that he teaches the occult and natural law from a positive, light occultist point of view. But when he was involved in that, he said that they were directly peddling this as an ideology. The New Age movement was a push by the social engineers as a sort of psyop to keep people stuck and essentially not taking action, not pushing back against evil because it's all love and light, and you don't want to judge things or be confrontational or whatever, and this kind of thing. And so I I'm only saying that to just urge people to question everything, especially your own beliefs, because there's nothing to really be afraid of. There, there's nothing wrong with being wrong, but as, you have to be willing to move past certain things. You can't do that if you don't first realize you were in a wrong mindset, but now there's a better direction to go. You know what I mean? Hopefully that's making sense. So to address the question here, is it in decline? I don't necessarily see that personally. I've seen kind of an uptick in this sort of general, I would kind of put the New Age in a similar basket as religion, especially like Christianity and things here in the West. These are the most popular sort of spiritual systems, if you will. And though there's differences, they're potentially a way to pacify people. Either so in the on the religious side, it can be, don't worry, God's got it, right? Just pray really hard, be faithful, and we have a savior coming to fix the mess that we have here on earth. And I'm not saying that that makes religion bad or that makes the new age belief system bad. I'm saying these are pitfalls that we need to be aware of. And so like there's like this spectrum that I see of religion is kind of like, don't worry, God's got it. But it gives you a, this is what reality is, and it's very fixed, right? These are God's laws. This is just the rule book, and you follow it to the T, or else you'll be punished, right? It's very rigid and kind of like static, stagnant. But on the other side, the new age is almost like the opposite, where it's like, oh, reality can just be whatever you want it to be, right? If you believe it and you feel good, then you'll just attract all the things, and there is no rules, so to speak. And that's just false as well, because as I said in the very beginning, natural law is the foundation of everything that I speak about, and that is that the universe is rational. It works a certain way, and that's not good or bad. It's just we have to come to realize the reality that we live in and how we operate in that. And where I'm going with this is I agree with you two about, since the pandemic, I think there's been an uptick in kind of pushing people into one of these camps, because that was really scary what happened, and disturbing and traumatic in a lot of ways. But people don't really know how to deal with that. And so it's easy to kind of just fall into either, I just need to pray and have faith, and God's going to take care of everything, because that's kind of coming from a place of powerlessness, or just ignore the negative, and it's not really happening, right? I live in my own little 5D bubble, and everything's unicorns and rainbows, and that's fine, because that's just my truth and my reality. That would be the new age side of it. But they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So, I mean, all this to answer the question, I do think that these all have kind of had an uptick in the last few years. I've seen definitely a lot more. You've got like Russell Brand converting to Christianity. Like there's a lot of that going on. And I just think it's a lot to do with people not having better systems to flock to. So they're just kind of like trying to cling to something that either gives them some kind of safety or understanding of what's happening, or just, I hate to sound harsh, but it's a bit of a childish mindset of just like, tell me nice things so I feel safe, because reality is really scary. You know what I mean? And so I think we're talking about New Age is supposed to be a spiritual thing. And to me, spirituality is about growing up and being like responsible for yourself, walking your own path, discovering what truth means for you, and what your relationship is to it, and all of that. So the shorter answer is, I do think that it's not on the decline, but the caveat is that maybe at this point it's been around a while and people are feeling a little bit burned in some ways, right? Maybe they read The Secret, they sat on their bed just really wishing for things, feeling the good feelings, gluing pictures to cardboard, and then they didn't get the stuff. And they're like, well, it didn't work. And so these ideas are going to have to evolve in some kind of way, or else they'll just be abandoned altogether. So maybe that's kind of where I see it, is like, we're looking for answers, we're looking for ways to make more sense of the world, especially because the world just seems to be getting crazier and crazier. But, people do realize that there has to be an evolution of these ideas, or else they'll just become completely obsolete, and people just kind of like jump to whatever the next big thing is.
If you are a small business owner looking to get in front of an audience of curious seekers, then the PsyChicks Collective might be the perfect fit for you. You'll be listed on our directory website and featured in all of our collective advertising efforts. Through our website, we provide aligned client matchmaking. People visiting our directory can send our collective members confidential messages that go into their email inbox. This is just one of the many ways that we help you advertise your unique business. The PsyChicks Collective is active, engaged, diverse, and full of people who are working in the light, sharing their gifts to empower others. We unite under our mission statement to empower self-love and self-trust through the casual exploration of the metaphysical. We would love to have you in our collective. What do you say? Will you join us? Thank you, all three of you, for your thoughts. And you definitely got my braining over here. I love that you brought up the possibility of New Age even being a psyop, Logan, which gets right into a whole other conversation that we could possibly have about is this decline really propaganda? I know Susie had mentioned that there's propaganda, obviously. Um, or is this a genuine natural shift? And Jojo had mentioned that it's actually a cycle or a pattern we're repeating on. So I do think we're finding a lot of common territory and things to kind of ponder with that. So, Susie, the next question will start with you this time. And Logan, you actually set us up perfectly for it. As more people um, as New Age and eclectic spiritual practices, more people with New Age and eclectic spiritual practices are beginning to openly question and challenge it. What do you think practitioners, so business owners, as well as the individuals who have deep roots in their beliefs, need to consider moving forward? And as I'm reading that, I just want to also simplify this question with context, as a lot of us have built our lives around these ideas, whether it be a business or our own personal, daily routines, belief systems, how we interact with the world around us, having it challenged, is, it's going to be disruptive. It's going to be activating. A lot of people may be feeling like something's being taken away from them without really understanding where to go next. So, in your opinion, starting with you, Susie, what do people really need to consider if that's going on with them? Whether it's professional concerns or personal concerns, if you could touch on both.
It has to do with truth at the end of the day, no matter what is true, whatever you resonate with, and that it's okay that changes, because we are here on Earth School to grow, to evolve. We're not here to just be spoon-fed this, like you're born. You have your conversation with your spirit guides before they drop you down the hatch. They pack your lunch. They put in what you signed up to go through. Okay, don't forget. Phew, you come down the chute, come out your mother's legs. They slap you. They put stuff in your eyes. They start pricking you, poking you, prodding you, getting you to cry, snip that umbilical cord. Like the whole system is about separation. And then once you are in you have to go to pre-K now at 3-4 years old. You're not ready for any of that stuff. And so this whole indoctrination will create that reliance. And then what happened in 2020, everything got rattled, and it caused people to either cling tighter or start to question the narrative, and then going through that whole noise. Well, one day you might think, well, geez, maybe Dr. Clark, who used to come to the house to take care of my mother and grandmother, well, they're not around anymore. And there's these new doctors, and they're telling me I need to do this and do that. And I'm obedient because I don't want to question. Well, these new generations with different planetary alignments are questioning that. And I'll tell you, when my youngest was 10 and I had taken him for his physical, and they're like, we got to give him all of these shots. And I'm like, what are they? And they're like, well, one is for sex diseases. I'm like, he's 10. He's 10. And so I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. And I had him write down all the list. They wanted him to give him like 7 different things. And I'm like, no, because it didn't feel right. Well, that was the first time I ever went against the grain, and that was actually the beginning of my awakening. And so you must grow. You've got to evolve. If you are 30 years old and you are repeating everything that you were spoon-fed when you were little, I don't know that that's exactly right. Because the whole world around you is evolving, whether you like it or not, whether you think it's for the better or for the worse, you got to know where you stand, and you can't just keep on drinking the Kool-Aid. There's that phrase, if you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything. Like, you got to know who the heck you are. And a lot of times that doesn't even happen until we're around 28, 29, 30 years old, when we have the first Saturn return and all our friends are marrying off and popping out kids and, following the white picket fence protocol. You go to college, you get in big debt, you get a big car payment, you have 2.5 kids, you retire and you die. Well, what's missing is the joy. So where's the fun? Where's the joy? No, none of that. You work 40 plus hours, so you're an exhausted, brain dead zombie. 2 days is not enough to replenish you or take care of anything else, and you're back at the grind again. It's a corrupted system that is intentional. Where we're at now is about questioning. Am I growing? Am I evolving? So all these things they're changing these rules. They're overturning these things that they overturn in court and all of this stuff. Well, who am I and what feels right for me? And then you kind of have to navigate that dark. And then you go into this dark abyss, and that's the dark night of the soul. And now you lose your identity. I don't know what way is up anymore. And it's beautiful, but it's scary as heck. You will eventually connect with something, and then you slowly, gradually rebuild. And then you seek. So whatever you seek, there's someone with their mouth blabbing away. Well, just because they're on a pedestal, does that mean that they earn the right? Because they have an expensive framed piece of paper? Does that mean I have to honor, obey, and be obedient to them? It's not like that anymore. Well, I like this about what they said. I'm going to hang on to that, and I'm going to discard the rest. And then it just creates more and more decision points for you to rebuild healthy morals, scruples, values, and you create your own traditions. And then you will become more leaner, cleaner. You'll feel better about yourself. When you get on that awakening journey, like, certain foods don't even taste good anymore. A couple years ago, I've been into a Klondike bar and it tasted like gasoline, because your intelligent body knows, like, don't put that poison in me. That's what we're going through right now. And so you must stand in your truth. If something resonates, hang on to it. And if it doesn't, question. And it's okay to discard it. It is okay to say no. It is okay to remove yourself from abusive, toxic family members that spoon-fed you the Kool-Aid. This is how we practice. If you don't do that, you're the devil. Well, you're entitled to your decision, but we don't need to any longer saying, no, you got to listen to me. It has to be that way. It's my way or the highway. We're out of that generational patterning now. It's a beautiful time to be alive because everything is blowing up around us. So it's chaotic. It's good. Chaos is good. All of this crap that's coming to the surface, it's always been there. So why do you want to fight it and turn away? It's the truth. It's bad, it's evil, but it's real. The sooner we can see it, the sooner we can change it. It's a very exciting time to be here. So you have to figure out who you are, what feels good, and if it doesn't hurt anyone else, then do more of that. And that will help you find your own alignment. Thanks.
I love the passion you brought there. And it's your turn, Logan, and then you, Jojo.
Yeah. Wow, Susie, you nailed it. I love that answer. I fully agree. I love that you started with the truth, because it always has to come back to the truth. And I mean the truth. Perception and belief are yours, but it's secondary to truth. Because if your perception isn't aligned with truth, then you're just setting yourself up for suffering and misery and confusion and chaos, unnecessarily. It's part of the journey. We're not going to get everything right, and that's important. Have grace for yourself, accept, the process of it, but your goal should always be the truth. The truth. It's the bullseye that you're aiming for every time. That's what we're going for. And the more we align our own individual perceptions with truth, the more we'll automatically align with other people, because the closer you get to truth and then I'm close to truth, they might be slightly different. But if we're aiming at the same target, then our arrows are going to be pretty close together, especially as we keep shooting and getting better at our shots. So yeah, it has to start with truth, because truth is prime. It is the, it is the chief aim and value. Getting my camera to focus here. And so with that said, you have to have really good developed discernment, because that's how you get from, your belief or your viewpoint, your perception. There's a million words. I just get annoyed when people overuse my truth and your truth, because there is only the truth, because the truth is just what is. And it's true that we can only have our subjective experience of truth, but that by its nature implies that there is a truth to experience to begin with. And so, like I think it's important to keep those words separate and know, like, my perceptions, my beliefs are mine, but that doesn't change what truth is. It's not about what I want to be true, what I don't want to be true, what I think is true or not true, because truth doesn't change based on our perceptions. It's our job to get with it, and to grow and evolve. That's what the whole spiritual journey is human evolution of consciousness towards being wiser and more moral, beings of agency, basically. So we need to understand, the trivium process is a truth discovery process taught by the classical, the Hellenistic cultures, and I think far before that as well. So I encourage everyone, look up, what is the trivium, for example, and the knowing why you believe what you believe. Because like you said perfectly, Susie, so many people are just walking around repeating these sound bites that they just hear and they don't even think about. There's no processing. It's just going in and they're just spitting it back out, like, pushing a button and just playing a recording or something. There's no true understanding and gnosis there. So everything that you hold, everything that comes out of your mouth and everything that you hold true internally, why do you believe that? Can you explain it? What's the rationale behind your position? We need to all become philosophers in our own right, because that's just part of being a human being. A philosopher isn't just some old guy in a robe that you read about, on at the Parthenon or whatever. Like, we're all philosophers, just many of us are really bad at it because the school system has utterly failed us. They've told us what to think and not how to think. But these are things that can be developed, especially when you first ignite the care in your heart for, as I said, truth. The truth is that North Star that you are striving for, because you care, because nothing's going to give you more value in your life than getting closer and closer to that every single day. And that's only going to just expand your abilities, your power, your abundance, your soul expression, and all of that. And so, like, yeah, keeping that the North Star, and asking what is your why. And again, as I said earlier, is it practical? Is it useful? We can talk about, twin flame this and um, Pleiadians that, but can time is an illusion. We hear this all the time. Okay, but you still have to be at work on time, or you still, you still takes this long to bake a turkey. Like, that's practical. You still need that. It may be an illusion, but it's a useful illusion, and it keeps a certain amount of order and structure in life. So that's what I mean about keeping it real, keeping it grounded. It's not about escaping reality and I live in the 5D and all that. No, like, we incarnated into these human bodies for a reason. If we were just being a soul and everything is one, let's just be souls and float around in space and do nothing, because there's nothing to do. There's nothing to achieve. There's nothing to learn. There's no mistakes to be made, and pick yourself back. That's the human experience. That's what we signed up for. So let's do it. Let's embrace it and stop demonizing that. You know what I mean? And then the last thing I'll say, and I'll finish here, is like, what even is new age? Is it new to begin with? Because the way I see it, it's sort of like an amalgamation of all sorts of different eclectic spiritual practices. Some of them are ancient, some of them are new. And I think that's where some of that social engineering has come in, is they've taken a lot of this old stuff that's legit and then mixed it with these really bad philosophical axioms that gets people disconnected from, the true spiritual path. So again, to answering this question of like, how are we moving forward with this, this challenging of all of this, is what is actually benefiting you. And if something's older, it doesn't necessarily make it better, but if something does withstand the test of time, it's at least worth considering that it's valuable, because it's being, especially in the esoteric practices. I'm a runes guy myself. I love tarot and astrology, but I'm less well versed. But all of these are beautiful philosophies and tools that are really, really old, probably older than we even think they are. And I'm all about that. And so when these people are questioning and demonizing these practices or whatever it may be, first of all, it's nobody else's business but yours. If it serves you, if it's useful in your own life, then it's irrelevant what somebody else thinks about it. It's like, okay, well, don't do it then. Like, that's your choice to make for you, but it gives me a lot of value. So who are you to tell me that I shouldn't do that? And that's one of the many issues I have with the religious mindset. They all think they know better about your own life than you do. You could be thriving and happy and just everything's going great, and they're over there miserable, but they're like, but you really need Jesus. Don't you understand? I'm trying to save your soul. And it's like, I'm good, thanks. I'm actually doing great. I'm not sure about you, but so let's stay in our own lane and focus on our individual paths and what's truly helping us, and evaluate each thing on its own merit. If it's useful, keep it. If it's not, or if you've realized there's a flaw or a fallacy, be completely fluid in letting it go. Keep your tap dancing shoes, your philosophical tap dancing shoes on. All right. Thanks for listening.
And it's your turn, Jojo.
Well, it's hard to find a lot to add to that because I really resonated with a lot of what both of you said. I think a big part of this for anyone on their spiritual journey, and then also for us as practitioners, we can emphasize this more for people, is to sort of relax a bit around some of this, in the sense that I really believe that almost regardless of what we do in our lives, some way, somehow, by the end of it all, we do all sort of get there to that enlightenment, if you want to call it that, or that truth. But many of us, those of us who consider ourselves spiritual or in this new age path, I think we are just people who are going about it in a more conscious way, as opposed to just living sort of the default life that's led, that is put out there for us, that we are born into. But even people who are more in that world and in that vibration, they will also get there. So we get wrapped up in like, am I doing the right thing? Am I finding the right path? I have to do more shadow work. I'm not, I haven't gotten this far with that. I haven't done enough of certain practice, or I've picked the wrong practice. And it's good to explore all of these things. But Logan, you really hit on some very core things of like, every one of us has to be in touch with these things of, is whatever I'm being taught or whatever practices I'm engaging with, do I feel empowered by them, or do I feel like I'm beholden to? Especially if you're involving others and you're learning these things through teachers, if you're investing money in these things as well, you really need to check in with that, because, like Susie said, there are people in our business who are a bit more sort of trapped in their ego, and to be fair, probably don't really realize it. In a lot of cases. And there's always that sort of ego creep in these things. But there has to be, because Logan's completely correct that we were not meant to just be one with spirit and these disembodied souls floating around, nor were we just meant to just be limited to the obvious and immediate like physical experiences of the material world. We are the union of these things. And real enlightenment is learning to integrate those two things because you're actually always fluctuating through them, again, whether you're aware of it or not. And the universe is just a bigger version of that. So things are coming into being and being chewed up by entropy and being built into new things. And there are phases where those things are all just part of the great miasma of everything. And that includes us. And that can be terrifying. But to me, it's actually quite exciting if you sort of surrender to that a little bit. So I think we have to check in with that a lot as individuals in these paths. Is this really serving me? And again, it is totally okay to take different bits and pieces and different lessons from different teachers and things. There is no one way. I do encourage people to spend a bit of time with whatever they latch onto for a while, though, because we also live in a world where our minds do like to have sort of shiny object syndrome. And so if you don't dedicate at least some amount of time to something, I don't think you really fully explore whether it's something that's good or helpful for you. But there's a balance to that. And so, again, if you get to a place where something really just isn't serving you and it just doesn't feel good to you, you can totally divorce yourself of that and kind of keep whatever you got from it that is right. Spirituality is a path, it's an individual path. We certainly have community. We can, there are common threads that sort of link our experience together, but our experiences are inherently unique. So I totally agree with that. And the idea of your truth and my truth, I believe that there really is just truth. But our experiences are unique. And that's the challenge, is to integrate those two things. My path to the truth is not going to be your path to the truth. Exactly. We can share, and there are commonalities, and someone can point along the path and be like, yeah, go into those woods. Those are the dark woods. I know it's scary, but I went there and I found it. And you're going to still have a different experience in those woods, even if they're the same woods. And so then as practitioners, as business owners, we really have to stay aligned with that. And there's also a bit of creep of, and this is more from the business side of things, we are business people trying to get our message and word out in this crazy social media internet world where attention is very starved. And what Susie said is very true. There is a greater saturation of us in this world as well, offering services and products and our ideas. I don't think it's oversaturated, but there is, I don't really like to use the word competition. I don't feel competitive about it, but we are competing in a way for people's attention. And so I think somewhat there's a creep of us pushing to saying more and more extreme things. So the woo that is out there that I see is becoming more and more woo, and maybe farther and farther from something that would be more accessible to a greater number of people on this earth and would actually serve more people, because we are trying to all stand out with our message. And this has crept into a lot of things that I've been doing. And in recent months, as I've been putting my new coaching program together, I've been really trying to pivot more towards adapting, bringing these very woo things like tarot to people who might think they're cool or have an interest in them, but don't see the practical application of it. So we're going to help people, and with what, like, for example, just with what I'm doing, it's really about helping people to use intuition without them having to say learn tarot, because that's a daunting thing for most people. And I am just seeing, when I see a lot of the advertising and stuff for our niche, it does feel like it's getting more and more out there. And I think that's just the pressure of us trying to stand out and grab attention. So we have to always really be mindful about how we're facing. Because I think if you are in this world to help people, and that's your why, for most of us, it is in some way. You want to help as many people as you possibly can, and so we have to really just be aware of that sort of creep, because it's easy to kind of get caught up in your own sort of hype and marketing machine. At least that's been my experience, again, as a practitioner and a business person.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say something before we move to our last question that kind of summarizes what we just discussed. There's whatever you believe spiritually, whoever's here with us tonight, whatever you believe about the metaphysical, however you've pulled your own eclectic kind of exposures together to form your belief systems, there's something that I think we can all agree that's built into us, which is the seeking of belonging and trying to avoid any form of pain and primarily rejection. We're largely tribal beings, and being part of things and being included in things it's not just, oh, because it feels good and it's fun and it's nice to have friends and a community. It's actually built into us. It's ingrained in us because that's how we used to need to guarantee our survival is through community and collaboration. So, and as I've thought about this, right, because I run that larger group and I've tried to build community in various different ways to the collective as well as the larger community and in-person events, it's sometimes people stranglehold what they think is it's hanging on to a belief, but what it actually is it's fear of the unknown, the fear of being discluded or rejected or kind of launched out of something, which prevents them maybe for, maybe they've outgrown tarot, but they're not willing to say that to their audience, so they continue forward because they don't want to expose themselves. Maybe a belief system that no longer serves them. They've had some new awareness and they want to let go, but now they've built their community or tribe around that. And I think that's where we can find both the empathy of whatever kind of reactions we get, whether it's in the social media sphere or going out into the world, having other people either react to us, reject us, respond to us as we grow and evolve individually, change our minds, change ourselves, is truth again is the factor. Because if it is meant for you and is true, a friend, a real person who actually cares about you, will not reject you simply because you've changed or transformed. A client or a customer base, maybe if it's a very specific thing, like you do Reiki and now you no longer do Reiki, so they're no longer a customer. Maybe that is something you're going to have to navigate if you're growing or evolving beyond that. But at the same time, if your business acumen or what you were doing to be of service is true, then you're still going to have people want something from you, even if that changes. And I just want to share that with people because I do feel like that is something we forget as we all are either clinging or evolving or kind of floating around each other. What is true stays, and what was meant for you floats away. And the more you align with that authenticity, as we've all talked about, the more you'll realize, like, maybe I don't need to have 100 friends. Maybe I just need to have, four close people who are on this journey with me. Or maybe my business doesn't have to be tied to one modality or one thing like that. Maybe I can build a business that's more balanced so I'm not relying on these modalities. So those are the kind of things I encourage people to think about. And so that they don't have to feel fear, they can actually feel excitement. So nobody wants to be, just as like we're all trying to get away from dead end jobs, the 9 to 5, nobody wants to be stuck in something forever. So I don't know which one of you guys said it, but it was so great. If you've been doing the same thing for 10 years and you haven't changed, that's actually a problem. That's actually probably disrupting you. That's probably making you feel uninspired. So it's a good time to kind of shake the trees and see what falls. And it's actually really exciting. And this conversation's surprisingly optimistic, isn't it? Uh, let's go to their next question. This one is going to start with Logan. So you get to speak first this time. So again, it's just falling together nicely here. So for those who are feeling this disenchantment or fatigue with New Age spirituality, but have identity or personal ties to it, what are the practical baby steps to launch into their new evolution and realign themselves with what feels true now? What do you suggest they do?
Yeah, I love this question. And so, a big thing that I teach and speak about on my platforms is principles. You have to have principles. And the definition, if you break down the word in, I believe, Latin, it means first things. So, it's the things that you hold as the highest, no matter what, where the world, I mean, they say change is the only constant. I have some contention with that. uh, it's generally true, though. The world of forms, the world of material, is always changing, um, and so you need those principles to be your bedrock to keep you steady, keep you on course. And so that would be my first suggestion: is maybe you don't know what your principles are. You should get really, really clear on that and ask yourself, like, okay, my certain values are changing or my interests are changing, but ideally your principles should be a little bit more steady. And so that's going to inform you or inform your decisions and your navigation in in whatever challenges that you're trying to navigate, basically. And that can be broken down further. You've got your philosophical principles, for example, sovereignty, right? Self-ownership. Those are some of my philosophical principles. And then you have moral, that's based in action. Morality is to do with your actions and whether they're causing harm to other people. And is it purposeful? That's another important one in this discussion, or this question, is analyzing, um, is this aligned with my purpose? Is this truly what I'm meant to be doing? And that's going to change, right? Maybe it was purposeful until it wasn't, and then you realize, okay, but that was that chapter, and now I need to move on to something else. That's totally okay. That's what life is. You're telling a story. It's not, chapter one, the story of my life, the end. Like, there's many chapters, and things are going to change. All the circumstances change. The next thing I would say is, I think it's really important to learn to balance when you're looking for truth, how something feels with the logic side of it. And I do see that in the new age realm, people tend to operate more from their feelings than with logic. It's just a general, observation. And I'm not saying feelings are bad. I'm saying that I believe holistic intelligence comes from being able to synthesize. There are two forms of intelligence, and the highest intelligence emerges when we are able to utilize essentially our left and our right brain. And sometimes the truth doesn't feel good, and that's important to realize. Change, transformation, healing, something. So these things can be very uncomfortable and painful, outright, excruciating, but it's necessary. And so you can't just gauge truth by how it feels. You also need to be willing to just kind of look at things more analytically and logically as well. I'm not saying ignore your feelings. I'm saying feel those feelings, take note of that, but also kind of counterbalance that with more rational analysis. So hopefully that made sense. And finally, I think it's important to build a personal relationship with your practices, not just going through the motions like a robotic ritual, but having that personal relationship and, knowing why you're doing things. Um, and not because somebody told you, oh, tarot's great for divination, you should do it. And then you just started doing it and you're like, oh, this is kind of cool, I guess. I think there is it's part of just the spiritual journey, is your soul has that deeper knowing. And just like as a pagan, I build a personal relationship with the gods that I'm praying to or venerating or leaving offerings for. That's what it's all about, is that personal relationship, because that's what, to me, spirituality is direct interface. And everything is relationships. You have a relationship to every person, whether even if you don't know them, that's your relationship, as you don't know them. You have a relationship to food, you have a relationship to weather, everything that possibly exists, every construct or item or whatever it may be, feeling, everything. It's in relationship. And to me, that's why animism is my core operating system spiritually, is because that's what it's all about, is the interconnectedness through relationships to you and everything in the universe. It's all part of this, what I call spiritual ecosystem. And so that's extremely important, at least from my experience and where I've landed as a pagan, as an animist, is having that personal relationship with especially your rituals, your practices, um, and ultimately being able to trust yourself, walking your own path, developing your own compass, and while not ignoring others as well, because people can be really valuable as mirrors. They can see things that you can't see. So there, yet again, there's another. It's just about balance. Follow your own compass, but don't ignore what other people say either, because you'll get advice on both sides. You know what I mean? Like, just do what you're told, fall in line, whatever. Or, oh, don't care what anyone thinks, don't listen to anyone, just do whatever you want. That's kind of narcissistic in my opinion. Like, no, like, just, it's all information. You just have to be the kind of the final arbiter of just like making sense of that, and then choosing a direction and go for there, and just don't be afraid, right? There's no real mistakes in this journey. It's all you're just trying to get where you get to. If you take a wrong step, you just taking the scenic route. But that was the lesson you needed to learn to realize maybe I shouldn't have gone that way, but you did, it wasn't a mistake because you learned that lesson. So it all works out. So it's a just keep going.
Wonderful. Okay, it's your turn, Jojo.
Well, I'll sort of underscore a lot of what Logan just said. 90% of the core of the message and work I do with people is basically telling them, like, really helping them to understand and embody the fact that they're actually doing really well. They're doing better than maybe they feel like they are, which is always was a big struggle of my own life as well. So that's such an important message in all of this is give yourself some grace. Um, you're gonna have you're going to meander and you're going to wander. And that's exactly how it's supposed to happen. Don't be afraid to lean into discomfort, certainly. But again, come back to, there is that compass. I think it really depends on exactly where you are sort of in your sort of spiritual journey, because there are sort of patterns that we have in this and sort of loops of this that we go through. And a lot of people, when they get to sort of a falling out with it and a disengagement from it, they're a little bit farther along in their journey. So they sort of got pulled into this. Usually they had some kind of suffering or sometimes a peak, like a key event in their life that was difficult and trying. And they're sort of pushed to a limit, sort of hit rock bottom in some way, maybe. And then out of that, they find this practice, they find this new age thing, whatever it happens to be for them. And it's such a peak experience when they first stumble upon it. It feels so good to find that tribe of people, to have some great experience, say at a retreat or whatever it is for you as an individual. And then it leads you down that road of practice and engaging with it. And eventually we find that you can't just keep having peak experiences. And that's just how human neurology and the human brain is wired. If you keep having these peak experiences all the time, eventually they're not peak anymore. They just don't feel special because we are completely wired to sort of pick up and understand things through contrast, which is why we do have to go through discomfort and pain in our lives. So that's typically where people have a lot of this falling out, at least in my experience. And that's a great place to come back to some things maybe that are a little more mundane. Again, a lot of us tend to be very sort of highly sensitive, or empathic. And so when we go down this road, we very much start to change our lives. And so it's a good and healthy thing to cut toxic or abusive people out of your life, for example. And I wouldn't say that you should just at some point reunite with those people if they really were, a harmful presence or influence in your life. Certainly, you don't need to sort of rejoin with them. But often we sort of weed out everyone to some extent. So I have people from, my own life. I have friends from when I was much younger. Friends of mine, I was much more like into sports and things like that. And along with my sports fandom came a lot of very destructive behaviors, things like compulsive gambling and substance abuse and things like that. And I'm on the other side of that now. But in that journey, I got to a place where I was so just everything in my life was in this new age and spiritual niche. I just sort of stopped watching any kind of TV ever, stopped engaging with any of this stuff. And it was very beneficial for me. But at some point, I had to turn back a bit. I had a realization a few years ago that some of these people I knew, some of them were quite toxic, and I don't maintain any contact with them. But some of those people were actually friends, even though they were kind of enabling some of these behaviors. There are also people who like showed up at my father's funeral, for example, and I isolated myself from all of that in an attempt to heal. And so, in a small way, I had to turn back and start. I felt the need to, be in touch with some of these people. Again, not the most toxic of them, but some of them really were just good friends, and I kind of lost that. So now I'm in a place where occasionally I can enjoy something very mundane like watching a baseball game here and there. And it hasn't pulled me back into like that lower vibration and all the addiction and things that went with it. But it's actually enhanced a lot of my spiritual practice and how I feel about it because it gives you some contrast. Because you are, again, meant to be here and experience these things. So I think everybody, if you're really stuck with this or you're feeling sort of cast out of your spiritual practice or just sort of disenfranchised with it, those are the things to check in with, I think, is, what is the balance to this? What are just some everyday things that I can occasionally do and still have these practices? And then I think it's important, and this is underscores again what Logan said, is to really check in with, like, when I got into any of these things, like just say it was, say, yoga, and I went to my first yoga class, for example, and it was amazing. It was kind of life changing. And you went to this class for a year, maybe years, and then eventually the class disbanded or whatever. And you try doing yoga at home, maybe, and it just, you're like, I don't like this at all. I think it's important to really check in and do some introspection about what were the facets of this that really were joyful and felt good to you. What were you actually getting out of it? Because you might find that, for example, it was the community more than the actual practice that you were finding benefit from. And that's okay. Community is certainly a healthy community. It can be a big part of your healing. But if you're not aware of exactly sort of what facets of that were, then you're at home doing your yoga and you're just like, I hate this. And yoga's, I don't understand. Like, why is yoga not working for me anymore? And it's like, well, it was really the people that you were with more than the actual yoga. And it can go both ways. And it's important to have those things, but really, really take some time with that, I think. And you can just do some simple writing and journaling to sort of try to sort that out a bit. And if you're someone who reads tarot for yourself or whatever it is, you can certainly use those practices to explore that as well. But those are the things it's hard to sort of disentangle some of these things a bit and understand really what it was that was healing and beneficial to you. And once you understand that, you can then start to find that again. You can either look for new practices or resume current practices that you had stopped, or find really like the right place in your life for those things.
Thank you, Jojo. And Susie?
That was fabulous. I love, like, I am thrilled having conversations with intelligent spiritual beings. Like, I'm not used to it. And so it's really thrilling and wonderful for me. Okay, that being said, I love Logan's phrase of holistic intelligence. So that hung. And then a lot of the stuff that Jojo had just said. So this is just such a great place to be. Okay, the holistic intelligence, the left brain, right brain. You can't just feel it, but you can't just think it. You don't want to overanalyze things, but it is also the need to once in a while hit that high, which Jojo was referencing, and that you can't always hit that high every time, because that's what's going to give you an addiction. That dopamine rush, that reward. However, when you're doing your practice and you're excited every day to do what you do, you're good. And it's going to evolve and you're going to grow and it's going to be an awesome thing. But if it starts to feel laggy or heavy, or now this is separate from second guessing, because people go through that, and there's a lot of explanations as to why that happens, and you have all of the planets and asteroids reflected in you. And so when planets go retrograde, for example, there's parts of you that are going to resonate with that and so forth. But you can be your rainbows and unicorns as long as you're anchored and grounded, as long as you know your body needs rest. You need to put good fuel into your body. You need to have a healthy mindset. And what even is that? It's being considerate and caring for my yin energy. Is I'm going to nurture myself. I'm going to have healthy boundaries. If somebody asks me to do something, I can't bake the brownies for the benefit because I'm committed to something else. And being able to say no without having guilt and shame, I mean, these are rites of passage, and getting more comfortable forming, maintaining, and keeping those boundaries in place. It helps you to feel better at the end of the day, not in the moment if you're not used to that. It is learning how to have good boundaries with yourself and not give into impulse or whim. You can't get away from knowing your why and not just doing it because it feels trendy or cool. That might be some people's entry point, like with crystal skulls. I love crystal skulls. And I wheel and deal them. They're awesome. They talk to me. And if I went in the middle of Walmart and said I talk to crystal skulls, that might be a little bit of an issue. But that started because I was like, what the heck is that? Ugh, ugh. But my Scorpio rising in me wants to know, the investigator, like, why are they a thing? Why does that work? I question it. I don't believe anybody. I think everyone's full of it, not full of themselves or full of whatever, until I can feel it viscerally. And it doesn't mean I need to agree, but you can feel authenticity. If somebody knows their stuff and that's their stance, and they have intelligence, their own intelligence that support what they're doing and why they're doing it, they have every right to do that. I don't have to agree. It's none of my business. I wish them well. But to at least do the inquiry, research, learn. Like, you got to keep these neural pathways excited and give them things to, like, I never stop reading. I never stop learning. To me, that's a healthy addiction, instead of having a life that I wanted to escape from because of the stress or whatever was going on. Now I'm excited to go to bed because I know I'm out of body. I'm having conversations and I'm doing cool things. I love to wake up because I'm going to bring my magic to the day and meet and help awesome people. And it's just the thrill of being alive. You want to be checking in with yourself. What makes you happy, and are you doing it? And if not, why not? And it's not because you want to wait for the kids to graduate or wait until blah, blah, blah. Stop it. Stop those excuses. You only have now. You've got choices. Every minute you're making choices. And if you're not making a choice, that's still a choice. You want to make those decisions in alignment with your motivation, with your goals, with what floats your boat, and expand and explore into those things so that you go to bed saying, I showed up for me. That's what matters. You got to show up for you first. And when you're talking to people, like, I can talk about the color blue. Well, you might see a sky blue. Somebody else might see a cobalt blue. Somebody else might see a midnight blue. And I'm going to sit here and talk about blue all day, and I'm all done now. And now you guys go and talk, and you're all having arguments because the shade of blue doesn't match. It's still coming from one unified place, but it's up to your own discretion on how you interpret that. And that's why a lot of people who will do the same modality will have very different stances on how they do what they do, how it works, and why it works. So I need proof. When I started doing energy healing, I didn't think I was doing anything. And my clients were like, oh, I feel so much better. And I swear to God, they were just saying it to make me feel good. And so I had to find a way to measure and quantify. And I looked high and low, and I found a biofeedback device. And then I was terrified to use it, because what if it wasn't any different? What if these people think I'm a phony? What if I'm wrong? What if I am full of crap? And so it took me 3 months, and I got a little voice say, use it on this guy. And it was a huge difference. I was like, shoo, oh my God, it's working. It's doing stuff. And so I like evidence. I can provide the evidence for what I do. That's good for me. That makes me good with what I do. So now I trust myself. I trust my higher power, and I stay in my lane. But if somebody comes into my space and they're asking questions, I am fully coming from my truth. I'm not saying something, I'm not regurgitating something, especially like because it sounds good. People can pick that up. Sensitive people can pick that up in a heartbeat. So don't pretend, don't portray what you're not. Don't be shy about what you are, because you have an audience. No matter what you do or where you come from, there are people who want to get to where you are. You have so much to share and offer people. Do not discredit that. You don't need to have 50,000 expensive framed pieces of paper on your wall to prove yourself, because that was a phase I went through. You're going to be empty inside. It is by showing up for you, doing what you love, helping people, and walking your darn talk. How many people do this kind of wonderful work, and then you see them at the bar and they're going home with everybody that they meet, and that's not walking your talk, and who are catty and being competitive and talking about everybody. Ah! I'm a loner. So like I don't, because I went through all of that dealing with other people, and I was shocked to hear people condemning other people when you think it's a spiritual community. That does not mean everyone has the same belief. It does not mean everyone is in the same place on a level of consciousness. And for me, I know exactly where I am. And so my senses are very up there. And that's where I like to just chill. And that's what I would recommend for everybody. You have to know thyself, and that will help surface your authenticity. It is good and healthy to grow. You don't need to chase the dopamine rush, but you do want to create a life that you absolutely adore, and no more making excuses. Now is the time, because you already can't get back yesterday. You want to show up for you. There is nothing more important. Know who you are. Stand in your truth. Love yourself first. Fill your cup, and then you can show up for the world.
Amazing. I'm unmuted now. Thank you for taking us home with that as we move into our Q&A part. As long as everybody here on the panel is still okay, we can continue to go forward with some more time. And those listening, if you are feeling tired, feel free to go. But we would love if you'd contribute some questions here, either in the chat, or if you don't know how to raise your hand, on the bottom of your screen on Zoom, you should see a hand, making it quite obvious. On mobile, if you're listening on mobile, you'll find three dots. You'll have to click those to click hand raise. It's a little bit different on Apple or Android, so best of luck to you finding that. But if you're struggling with it, you can just comment in the chat and we'll just find you there and I'll bring you on. So as we collect some questions and give people a minute to digest all that, Susie's right. It is so refreshing to be amongst other people who can talk about this in a deep and nuanced way and do so respectfully and with some thoughtful contributions. So it's been so wonderful. This time went by so quickly because I think we were all really on the same page of what we wanted to get across here. And so thank you so much to all three of you for everything. And different circles bring different conversations. And I hope everybody in the audience there feels that as well, because it's just great. Addressing our audience right now, I'm looking for some hands up or questions here in the comments. They're probably just taking it all in. Do know you can ask us anything, so it doesn't necessarily have to pertain to something said tonight, although that would be best, just because that's where all our brains are. But if there's just a general curiosity you have about any one of our speakers or anything, Q&A is open. You might be shy. It is late, and we said a lot. There's a lot to take in from this. It was really good. Does anybody have anything, final thoughts, anything to say to each other? You're all more than welcome to do that here. I'm not going to do a particular order, but any final thoughts? Because I'm going to have to pull up some questions here to Q&A you if we don't get any from the audience. So if you want to chat amongst yourselves, I'm just going to take a moment to think of a few questions to give you an opportunity to kind of snowball on some questions.
Well, I'll say that I'm very impressed with both of you, and it's been so cool that I've never interacted with y'all before, and then I just show up and we just dive into this amazing, rich conversation, and there's a lot of resonance for sure. And yeah,
Well, I agree with that completely. It's really been a joy to be on with both of you, and it's been really interesting, especially you, Logan, to get a sense of kind of how you really think about this stuff. Because, and this speaks to a bit of sort of the creep of social media. Because I'll admit, there's a couple of times where I've seen some posts of yours and had a little bit of a reaction to them, like I don't know about this, or that kind of thing. And but now that we're in
right.
conversation, it's like I have a much better sense of where you're coming from. And again, it's that pressure, as people being in business, like we are trying to get attention on our stuff. So we
Hmm.
always have to, have a balance of that. And for me, it's like almost the opposite, where I'm maybe too afraid to be kind of bold and a little bit salacious with some of my, messaging. So I really
Yeah.
enjoyed this, and Susie, it's been great to really get a better sense of sort of your thoughts about these things as well. So I don't want to discount you as either.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, this is exciting. It's so welcome because it's kind of rare. So I really, really grateful to Brandy for selecting us to be on the panel together. I love the different perspectives, and we really bring some rich and diverse information to the table. It's a significant value to me to know that there's cool people who are deep thinkers, that we can, sit at a table together and have a really good, valuable, content-rich conversation. It's awesome.
That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to start doing these panels. First of all, to give a platform to showcase the talent inside of the collective, so that we can go beyond just, trying to grab attention in the Facebook group, the white sea of endless, dopamine slot machine, as I call my experience on Facebook a lot of the time. But the depth of the conversation is really important, because even inside of these really broad new age or spiritual or metaphysical communities, however you want to describe it, everybody's coming to it from different angles. Everybody's learned from different teachers. People have different motivations for getting into it. And luckily, the people who like circulate around myself and inside of PsyChicks, because I think PsyChicks can be very activating to kind of get people out who just want to live in the love and light, or just want to peddle their, $30 sessions without having to explain themselves. I want to create things that filter that out, because this is kind of where we want to get. If we are continuing forward as, whether you own the title or not, you are part of the New Age category. Those who can provide depth will be the ones who will be able to continue no matter what happens. If someone can't explain, like they're still a beginner, they got their certification last weekend with some Reiki workshop, and now they're out there trying to make a buck, selling that to their friends and family, but they really can't explain beyond my teacher told me, so I do this thing and things are supposed to happen, which is unfortunately the case, because Susie said it and I laughed out loud. It wasn't about the bubblegum machine. You can get a Reiki certification out of a bubblegum machine now. But the reality is we are amongst that. That's what we are all, whether you like it or not, what you are being lumped into. Reputations are being affected by the behavior of that individual, because how they act, how they run their business, how they present themselves is, consequentially affecting the entire industry, whether that's growing or declining. We're all in that boat together. So then opportunities to bring depth and kind of expose ourselves, and so that people can see if we resonate with them or not, but also like how seriously or non-seriously, how thoughtfully like we proceed is really what's going to bring clients in. It's what's going to bring people to you. You can't really get away with not having depth anymore, not having really specific understanding. And those people are growing too. They're on their journey. So we have beginners, and beginners should be allowed to be beginners as well. I have to add that, because we were all beginners once, and the snobbery or elitism of this industry also is a blatant concern. But it's important that you can have conversations both with your peers, and then also get on a stage or a platform of some sort and explain yourself. If you're going to be out there saying, I possess this mystical power, I possess the ability to help you with insert problem here, I really only want to be surrounded by people who can do that, who are able to stand up beside the thing that they, you know, say they can do. So thank you for that, and thank you for demonstrating that so well tonight, and just reminding me why I think these panels are an absolute necessity as both PsyChicks evolves, but I also think our industry as a whole evolves. Lost my word there. Um, okay, I have one question, so at least we have one question. I have one question to ask you all tonight. So let's try to go through it fairly quickly, just so our audience isn't getting too tired. But I want you to share, because everybody liked on the other panel some personal storytelling. What was your gateway? So what was the first thing? And with some reflection to that, what was your gateway into the new age? So whether you were 14 years old and somebody's mom thought it was a good idea to bring a Ouija board, that's what happened to me, um, to a sleepover party, or if it was something else, whatever it was, what was your introduction to the new age? And how have you evolved? So where are you now? I think that's a wonderful way to get to know each other, and kind of also confess some things that we all go through, because we all started somewhere with something. Something was a catalyst or an introduction. So I'm going to go back to our original order and start with you, Jojo, and try to give yourself about 5 minutes on this, not more.
Okay, I'll try to be succinct. So my my pull into all of this came from a lot of my childhood interest in fantasy, fiction, in gaming, Dungeons and Dragons, and all that whole genre of thing. It came from something very naive and kind of innocent. And, I read The Hobbit when I was like in fourth grade as an early reader. I also had a lot of interest in science and stuff too. And so it was very interesting for me because I had this pull and like always was like, is magic real? This kind of thing. Like, I don't, I understood what fiction was. It wasn't like completely delusional, but maybe magic can be real. And then basically at about 12 years of age, I had this falling out. I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I got thrown out of catechism because I dared to suggest that the Big Bang was essentially God, is all the things as it says in Genesis, and they weren't having it. And so they sent me home. And I didn't really get any real trouble. My parents weren't super strict about it. But very shortly after that, I was wandering around in a little used bookstore in my town. I grew up in this college town, so we had all these great little bookstores. And I found my way into the New Age and occult section, and I found Aleister Crowley's Magic and Theory and Practice. And so this is like a source book of Western ceremonial magic, as founded by the great occultist Aleister Crowley in the late 1800s. So Logan, you might be a bit familiar with some of this stuff, probably more than others here. And I found that book and I was reading it. I looked through it and I'm like, oh, here are the pentagrams, here are the rituals. And like, this isn't just some fiction, this is not in the fiction section of these books. And I bought it with my allowance and I kept it hidden and I started reading it. And if anyone who knows anything about that stuff, it's a really hard way to learn magic. It's written in late 1800s English. Everything's deeply encoded because you couldn't write about this stuff back then. But that's what pulled me into it. And from there, I started down all the rabbit holes of philosophy and all these different systems and things. So.
Before I let the next one of you speak, first of all, I have to say, I guess pre the Ouija board incident, I myself also like Lord of the Rings nerd, super into like
Yeah.
fantasy role-playing web forums and stuff, which is kind of like on the fringe. It will introduce you to, people who want to believe in magic. So I definitely resonate with that. And I just want to ask you, Jojo, this question's coming from me. Um, like Crowley and right away, like I get ickies, but maybe it's just kind of from where I've come from. I'm like, oh yikes. But some people find that feeling exciting, and that's why they're led to explore that stuff. How do you feel about Aleister Crowley's work now, currently? Is it still something that resonates with you, that you pull from, or um, what are your thoughts?
Um, it is, and there's so a lot of the underpinnings of it I do pull from. One thing I found is that the Western system of ceremonial magic is vast and complex, and that appeals to a certain group of people. A lot of the people I know that practice this type of magic are like computer programmers and tech people. They like the highly ordered, highly intricate system of it. But as we are looking at a world that is becoming increasingly neurodivergent and starved for attention, these systems are not useful for a lot of people. And you can go the opposite way with that, and you can go to like law of attraction, like Logan was saying, just think it and feel it, and it happens. And those things also work for a certain subset of people, but there are intricacies to that are not being taught in the popular teachings of it. And so I seek to, in my own teachings and programs, find something that is this nice middle ground where there's a simplicity to it, and yet it doesn't overlook the very real sort of fundamental concepts that are necessary to sort of get aligned with what your real divine purpose is, and then actually bring that to fruition and make it really manifest and happen. So yeah, there's a lot there, but it just doesn't work for everyone. It just doesn't appeal to a broad enough group of people that I'd like to help. So.
And I just want to add to that too, if somebody's just being introduced to that for the first time, um, sometimes like there's nothing wrong about collecting information, right? So there's people out there who tell you, don't read that book or don't consume that content because it is either A, evil or A, enlightened, or they'll give labels to things to keep you away or kind of control your behavior. And what I've found in my seeking experience is if something's interesting to you, you can consume it and then discern whether or not it had resonance. Nothing. Now, your behaviors or intention behind practice, it's very different because that's working with energy. But somebody judging somebody who's like, oh, I read this book or I've borrowed from this teaching, and that maybe has either a negative or positive connotation in certain groups or belief systems. You want to be very careful what people say. You shouldn't do something because of insert opinion. Instead, like, you should explore why you might be fearful of something or why other people want to implant fear and really consider that. But there's no harm in information collecting, and that's how you get wisdom at the end of the day. So, that's just my 2 cents on that. I think it's absolutely fine and interesting as well. Okay, your turn, Susie. Tell us your story.
I always loved astrology. I had a dream when I was like 8 or 9 years old that I walked out front and looked into the sky, and that the planet Jupiter had a little popsicle stick coming out of it with a label, and it said Jupiter on it in capital letters. I've always been infatuated by psychology and how it relates to astrology, how people's sun sign impact them. And so when I first got out of my abusive marriage, that was the first thing, is I wanted to understand why. And the first thing I went to was astrology. And then the first divination was tarot. And super duper love. I live, love, and breathe astrology all day. Uh, so it's kind of an uneventful story, but it's still my story. Uh, and then energy healing is so pretty much after the astrology, that was my foundational anchor, because it's a language and I needed something to hang on to. That's a language. My fears of woo-woo, people judging me, I needed to get through that. And how interesting that it wasn't until 2015, when my dad passed away, that I came out of the woo-woo closet and I started to do psychic fairs and tarot readings, and that built into I didn't do well with the pendulum. Now if I make a pendulum, it'll work for me, but outside of that, not so much. And outside of that, everything else was because I doubted it, because I questioned it. I don't believe in that stuff. What is this Reiki stuff? And I paid the most recommended Reiki person. I laid there for half an hour. For half an hour, all I heard was, okay, you had this and that. I didn't feel anything. I was like, this is a bunch of bunk. And I came home and hammered on my keyboard about Reiki. And of course, the first thing it said is a pseudoscience. I'm like, they do it. They do it. And but then when I figured out, I took some classes and I started feeling some stuff, and I was like, oh, there's something there. And everything was based on my own skepticism, the need to prove, and I need to quantify, I need to measure. And once I did it and I was convinced and I could replicate it and I can teach it and get the same results, that's what kind of built my world to where it is today. So my gateway was astrology all day long. Oh, I will add one other little thing. When I was a Doors freak, Jim Morrison and the Doors. And I used to try to channel Jim Morrison. I didn't know that term channel back at the time. And I would say, like, if you're real, you're going to move that lamp. And all kinds of funny things like that. I was raised loosely Roman Catholic, and I had an aunt that was a nun, and I hated her. So it was just everything to rebel against that. Like, we were going to go to the show, and my uncle was driving, and she wanted to see Heaven Can Wait, and I wanted to see Grease. And, we just never got along until I went partying one weekend. I come home, I'm smashed on apple cider or the hard cider, and I'm like, oh, sister, I want to know how to get closer to God. Yeah, didn't work so well, but yeah, so that's my little story.
Thank you for sharing your story. And your story is just really genuine, and I loved hearing it. So thank you so much. Your turn, Logan. Let's hear, what was your gateway? What brought you to us today?
Yeah, quite the journey. As I said, I was raised in a Christian household, and I reached, as they say, the age of reason, and I started questioning things, and unfortunately or fortunately, whatever, I kind of pendulum swung all the way towards like nihilism, atheism, like, oh, spirituality is a scam, and science is the only truth, and all that kind of stuff, which again, science is cool. It's just that's a totally materialistic left brain perspective. And then I got pretty like red slash black pilled into conspiracy stuff, which again has its place as well. But that gave me the idea that the occult is evil because all the psychopaths in power are using it, and devil, bad, whatever, I didn't go past that yet. And then DMT happened, and that just kind of blew the lid off of all of those preconceptions I had about spirituality and like, okay, well, religion's bullshit, but I think spirituality is something different, and maybe that's worth exploring because reality's definitely not what we think it is. I've seen that firsthand now. And then that's when I finally started kind of like coming full circle to the place that I'm at now, which is, politically I'm an anarchist. That's just the more correct moral position. And as I continued, it's like anarchism leads into natural law, and in natural law, you realize, well, that's really what like our ancestors lived their based their whole, spirituality, and that's basically what paganism is. And, animism is the mindset, and the paganism is the practice, the rituals, the cycles, and all of that. That's how I view that. So that's pretty much where I landed. And so at certain point I realized, well, okay, maybe the occult's not all bad as well. And then you look at, well, pretty much the occult all came out of pagan practices anyways, because that was what spirituality was before religion kind of came and like imposed itself on everyone. And so, yeah, it's just about a reconnection with our past, and our sort of birthright as just a natural being in a natural world, and that's to me what being pagan is. And then it makes sense to have a relationship with the gods and do some rituals, to kind of put action into your intentions, beyond just if you want a job, you put in an application, but before you put the application, you could do some magic as well, just to kind of prime the ethers for that. You're kind of impregnating the universe with your desire before you even begin to take the physical action. It's just a bigger process. So
Appreciate that. I appreciate knowing that more about you. Uh, I'll share a little bit before we wrap up. Just what you inspired, especially Susie, you were talking about rebellion, and my journey was very similar in a form as a form of rebellion. My parents were very atheist, but I also grew up in a chaotic household with alcoholism and other such things going on. And so it's interesting because as you were all sharing your story, I was like, just occurring to me that I'm like, it's funny because in my family, I'm still the black sheep. I'm the spiritual one. I'm the wooey one. I'm the one who doesn't have a conventional form of employment. All of the things I kind of became separate from my family unit from and have had a lot of questioning and challenging of me because of that being different. And you guys were all talking. I was like, in some ways, it's funny because we rebel, right? For me, it was like, I'm going to get into this stuff as a form of rebellion. A friend of mine who I'm so grateful for her, which she was very Christian and she took me to church, which was one of my first spiritual, like positive spiritual experiences. I started going to youth group and going to church with her on a regular basis, which was helping me deal with a lot of things going on in my home life and whatnot as well. So our makeup of who we are and our exposures definitely kind of, they push us off on our journeys, and then that curious seeking that leads us to where we go, where we are now, where we're going to go eventually, and kind of embracing that. And when you're amongst other people who understand that, it seems so common, and it's like, oh, I get it. I get everything you're saying and how one thing leads to another. And it's all kind of a response to different kind of intuitive zings and what you're attracted to. But in the, regular world, when you're around people who are not on that path, it seems like you're just, some kind of like inconsistent first spirit jumping from one thing to another and collecting ideas. So it's lovely to be with other people and understand that that's like something we all commonly understand what it's like to be on that seeking path and that journey together, separately but together, and how that comes to be, from our childhood to our adolescence to our adult life. I love it, and this is very refreshing to hear from you all tonight and your stories. So, if our audience is still with us, we are going to wrap up. Thank you so much for coming. And I hope if you can do one thing to say thank you for this time and this content, if you found value in it, is to go post in the larger Side Chicks community and just say that you came and that it was great, because that's going to help future panels. I'm going to plug right now Friday's panel, which is all about the ethics of mediumship. So we have three professional psychic mediums. These are ones who are doing mediumship for their full-time source of income, discussing the ethics and concerns, whether you are skeptical or fully bought into mediumship, what you need to consider if you're doing it on a professional level. So I think that's going to be a really similar conversation in the sense that they're going to bring a lot of depth to this. So I do want to invite you to Friday's panel as well. And then we have another panel coming up before the end of the month. And this one is also a doozy because it's all about authentic spiritual expression versus appropriation. And we have three modern shamans. So they all have the title shaman, discussing appropriation, cultural appropriation when doing ceremonies, rituals, teaching. So it's going to be really exciting, and that's happening on the 21st. So I just want to plug those two more upcoming panels. If you attended live and you think somebody else might like to come to the next live one, we're trying to get some legs with this. I really want to build Side Chicks off of this new format, expanding us beyond the Facebook group. And so it's a massive gesture to me to help spread the word and say this is something different and interesting happening. I also have not been able to find anybody else with a spiritual community like mine doing something like this. So I would love to have other people put some energy behind getting the word out so it can kind of evolve. If you're interested in joining the PsyChicks Collective, my last plug, just reach out to me. I'll walk you through the steps of joining us so you can be featured on a panel if you'd like to be one of the panelists, as well as enjoy all the other benefits of being in the collective. I'm going to allow everybody here to say, a few sentences of good night, and then feel free to go and enjoy your evening. So, Logan, would you like to say good night?
Sure. Good night. This was this was great. Really appreciate everyone tuning in and the participants here. Really rich and provoking in a good way conversation. And yeah, if anyone would like to check out my channel, The Wizard Factory, you just go to thewizardfactory.com and all my links are there, even my personals if you want to, connect on Facebook or whatever.
And you, Susie?
Yes, thank you. This has been a beautiful experience. I'm grateful for everybody who's watching whenever now is for you. And my website is suzy-woo.com. I've got a newsletter. If you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get a high heart healing sound video. And I'm also offering a discount. Anybody who watches this and purchases any service from me at all, you get 15% off with the discount code PsyChicks1111. I hope everybody has a beautiful evening. Thank you so much, Brandy and gentlemen.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank everyone else for being here tonight. This was a lot of fun, and I would like to leave us with a little prediction of the future, since I am kind of a fortune teller. I see us and the collective, the larger collective, one day doing this as a big in-person panel, and maybe having a whole weekend Side Chicks event somewhere at a big convention center someday. So I think that would be wonderful for all of us. And if you want to engage with any of my offerings, you can find my website at www.jojotarot, that's JOJO tarot.com. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.